Are we filming? Yes, we are. So welcome to another podcast. This podcast I'm not sure how long it's going to run, but we'll see, because obviously health-wise, I'm going to be doing this in bursts. And I'm finding that a little bit easier. So first comment I'm going to respond to. This is in response to a recent video where I said, should customers be allowed to handle the merchandise, i.e. filofaxes, before purchase in a store? So they can, almost like a test drive for a car. You wouldn't buy a car without test driving it, would you? So would you buy a filofax in a box without having a look? Now, obviously you can't do that if you buy directly from Filofax or Amazon or shall we say on eBay, if you're buying a pre-loved Filofax, although one would assume hopefully that the seller would give you as much information as they possibly could in the photographs. But when it comes to buying online from, say, Filofax themselves, that isn't possible. You can't email and say, can you please open the box and take pictures of the rings so that I can be satisfied that the one you're sending me has got good rings rather than faulty rings. And you can't do that, although it might be a good idea. But anyway, so this video was in part filmed in my local John Lewis store. It's got a very good reputation here. It's a small chain in the UK. And in that video, I showed some discounted Maldens, which were going for £45, and they were A5 size. Now, this viewer says A5 Malden for £45 with a teary face. Well, it's tricky, isn't it? If you bought a full price Malden in A5, the fact that you would be able to buy one at this particular moment in time, a little while ago, for £45, would have made you slightly disconsolate, perhaps. But it just goes to show that sometimes there are bargains to be had. I recently bought a personal size Malden for £52, brand new, in my John Lewis store. And here were some A5 Maldens for £45. Actually, I'm not sure whether they were Norfolks or Maldens. Probably Maldens. So I just said it's a great price, isn't it? It's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult when you buy something and then you find someone else has got a better deal. But that is just life, unfortunately. Okay, so a review. It's quite some time since I did this, but it's a review of the Alan Berto Discbound felt notebook. And a subscriber says, wow, this seems perfect for note cards. It is actually a really, really good idea. And if you have a hand punch, do I have a hand punch somewhere? Just having a look for it. Is it in here? Yeah, I'm just having a look. I should have been prepared, but this is the hand punch, which allows you to, I think this was about 13, 14, 15 pounds. It allows you to punch your own paper instead of buying a really, 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 really expensive multi-punch for the Discbound system. So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it is an ideal size. This would probably do cards, okay. I don't know, probably it's 120 GSM card, isn't it, for an index card? Maybe a bit more, maybe 160, don't know, but this will do it. So yes, it is a very, very good idea. Okay, so we're back briefly to my video again. Should customers be allowed to handle filofaxes on display? And my answer is yes, they should. But this viewer says it's a real rarity to see filofaxes that you can see or touch. It's okay if you can get them from Amazon. It's a very easy process to return. I saw a Filofax Norfolk in John Lewis, but bought it from Amazon as it was significantly cheaper than John Lewis. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. From my experience, 2.5 years ago, I bought a Malden for £50 from, not John Lewis, from Amazon. And I bought it, and when I got it, it was clearly a fake. It was absolutely a fake. It didn't even smell like leather. It definitely was made of plastic and like a suede rather than this antique leather. Extraordinary how Amazon can't get a grip on fraudulent activity like that, which I suppose it's a bit like a game of whack-a-mole, isn't it? As soon as you knock one in, another one pops up. It is the way of it. So Amazon, and I sent it back and got a refund, no problem. But this is an issue. This is an issue that we have to be wary of. Certainly here in the UK, maybe in the States, maybe other countries as well, but certainly this is what's going on here. The cost of processing refunds with mail order firms, and when I mean mail order, I mean online. You get it sent, you order online, get it sent through the post, like Amazon. This is at some point times so costly to administer. You have to. Where was it? I was reading on the BBC website a few days ago. Forgive my ignorance about female fashion, but it was Pretty Young Thing or Pretty Little Thing. There's a company called Pretty Young Thing, Pretty Little Thing. I don't know. Let me have a look at this. I'm just going to check. Young Thing. Is it Pretty Young Thing? No, Pretty Little Thing. Let's just try Pretty. You ladies out there are screaming at me to it's thing. Pretty Little Thing. Okay, so it's Pretty Little Thing, big firm, mail order, and alongside other mail order or online activities, they now have an algorithm that effectively and arbitrarily bans frequent returners because it's costing the company so much. I know some companies, online companies, are charging for returns now. It is huge. It is absolutely huge. And there was a big program on the radio about it where companies have to, the cost of processing a return is so enormous that it exceeds the value of the product. And so this is something that is perhaps going to be prevalent with Amazon as well. I have heard rumours that they are doing that. And of course, if you are a subscriber of Amazon Prime, well, you're going to lose that as well. And you're going to lose all your TV, and you're going to lose Amazon Prime Music. So no one knows, I guess, how the algorithm calculates whether to arbitrarily ban someone or not. But this is becoming more and more prevalent. Let me just remove Pretty Young Thing from my screen here. So yes, you can sometimes buy things cheaper on Amazon, and yes, you might get bans, but if you buy something from a bricks and mortar store, I suspect that, you know, you could, it's a lot easier to return it to the store. It is easy, and you pay your money and you take your choice. But it is something that all of us, especially those who frequently buy stuff. I mean, I buy quite a lot of stuff online because, for instance, I'll give you an example. I cannot go into my local arts store and buy some Noodler's ink. They don't stock it. Neither does John Lewis, neither does W. Smith's. I have to buy it online. I mean, even something like Quink ink, which is a staple of schoolboys back in the 70s and 80s, I can't buy this anywhere other than online. So it is inevitable. It is inevitable. And with secondhand binders, I'm going to be doing a review of this Holborn soon. But you know, I can get hold of this by buying it on eBay, but I can't really go to a market and necessarily buy a used Holborn just like that. The expectation is that it's few and far between. Although yesterday I did buy a Filofax, can't remember which one it was, for 50p at a car boot sale. Car boot sales are similar to yard sales, if you like. So that's the cheapest one I bought this year, and it was just sitting there beckoning me. It was saying, Neil, buy it. I'm still here, you know, don't go past. And of course I did buy it. I don't need it, but you cannot have too many Filofaxes. That's the law. Or at least it should be the law. So when you buy from a shop or online, there are risks. But I must admit, if I can, I prefer buying from my local bricks and mortar store than online. But sometimes it's not possible. Okay. QR codes. I haven't talked about QR codes for a little while. What I'm doing is I'm leaving it. I've been following, and I've been following the situation, and I've been in contact with Filofax. I'm not the only one. Several people, no doubt, have done so, and as a result of that, collectively, class action perhaps meant that Filofax, or the FLB group, offered an olive branch to those of us who do not want QR codes. And so they offered at least a small range of Filofax inserts, diary inserts, without the QR codes. Now I've decided to leave it for a little while, because my plan is to, maybe in a month or two's time, after I've moved house, because I'm moving house soon, and there's a lot going on. I should have picked up the keys today, but there's been a delay with carpets. It's just the way it is. How frustrating. So I'm still in my studio here, such as it is, or aka my back bedroom. And I'm obviously, I've got it on the back burner, but I will resume I'm keeping an eye on Filofax about what they're going to do with this. So I mentioned in podcast episode 33, this reader says, or viewer says, all Filofax need to do is ditch the awful QR codes until they relook at the printing of them. I will go elsewhere for my 2025 refill. P.S. I've had 2 Maldens and 2 Norfolks, never had a problem with the rings. Okay, so I have had 2 Maldens. Both of them I had problems with. I haven't had a Norfolk, but I do like the Norfolk, but I'll mention that briefly in a sec. Hold that thought. The first Malden I had, which was personal size, it was clearly a fake from Amazon. And then recently, I stated the intention earlier this year to review some of the, even though I'm kind of a vintage kind of guy when it comes to Filofaxes, I promised that I would review as many modern Filofaxes in the current range as possible. And so far I've done 3 this year. First of all, the Saffiano, secondly, the Malden, and thirdly, the Heritage. And the Saffiano was fine, other than there was 0 flatability. That took me by surprise, but there we go. But I had problems with rings on both the Heritage and the Malden, but I'm keeping them, even though really I should have, as a consumer, I would have sent them back. But as a tester, a long-term tester, I've decided to keep them and just put it down to experience. But This lady says that she's had 2 Maldens and 2 Norfolks and never had a problem with rings. I guess we have to be very, very careful not to skew our results, because people aren't going to chat about this on social media saying, guess what, I bought a Norfolk and the rings are fine. They're not going to do that. Probably not going to do that. But maybe they will say something if the rings are if there's a gap, or they're misaligned, or there's a problem with anything. So I have open minds, and I've always pointed out that I can only speak for my experiences with the binders I own or have come across. And I'm prepared to accept that it is an occasional problem. I'm hoping it's an occasional problem. The one thing that I cannot get my head round is, if you are in the factory somewhere, China, India, or wherever these filofaxes are made, and you are on a production line, and you get out of a box or a tray on the production line, and you have the ring mechanism in your hands. It's actually in your hands. It would take maybe 5 seconds to press the thumb mechanisms to open it and shut them, and just have a look and see if there's poor alignment or gaps. And if there are, reject it, because they can be put in another box and they can be sent back to the factory that made these ring mechanisms. And yet presumably they've got these ring mechanisms in their hands, and rather than have a look at them, quickly decide whether they're good or not so good, and then put them in a reject box or fit them to the Filofax, regardless of whether they're in alignment or gaps. They just fit them into the Filofax. Now, back in the day, back in the 70s, there was a lot of industrial action in the motoring industry. We had British cars made by British workers with typical British unrest, and there was one company that will remain nameless, but they were a huge company that do not exist anymore. Why don't they exist? Because the perception of poor quality control meant that as consumers, we ended up avoiding buying those cars. And there was a joke that if you bought a car that was a Friday car, it would be full of faults. I bought a car, the only car I've ever bought brand new was from this company. And in the 12-month warranty, it had 49 separate faults. One of them was the door handle fell off. The door handle fell off. Others were where there are grommets that fit wires through the bulkheads. They hadn't fitted the grommets. Why would they not do that? There was problems with the brakes, there's problems with the suspension, problems with the timing on the engine. Even the steering wheel, check this out. The steering wheel was on slightly misaligned. So the logo and the main horizontal bit in the steering wheel, instead of being horizontal, it was at a slight angle, because they just fitted it on the spline and done the nut up without. And when I look back, I think that is just unbelievable. But it is indicative of the fact that there are some issues with quality control where people don't care. And that might be poor wages, or it might be some ambivalence. But I would say there should be a duty of care for all employers, no matter how good or bad the pay is or the working conditions. It must surely be a sensible move to, before you make that product and put it in the box, there must be a realization that if you don't check, say in this case the rings, you can be sure that the customer is going to check the rings, and if they're not happy, they will return them, and then there's going to be an extra cost. Now, I do not know. I'm reluctant to say this, but all I'm saying is, obviously I can't. Filofax are not here to defend themselves, but one of my viewers has recently told me that when her partner used to work for Filofax, they had a huge number of returns. Who knows, for various reasons, which were then those binders were thrown away. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm just in the middle here, and I'm regaling you of the what the viewer was saying. But if that is true, that is a shocking waste. I would say, rather than having all these returns, maybe, just maybe, it would be so much easier to have some element of quality control where you get a ring. When people come in they get trained and they're on the job, as it were. Their induction training. What they should be told to do is get the rings, have a look. If there's a problem with gaps or problem with alignment, put them in the box smart rejects. Do not fit them to the Filofax, because then the customer will find out, and then that cost of the returns is so enormous that doesn't come out of shareholders' pockets. No, it comes out of your pocket as a buyer, because all those returns, the cost of administrating that return has to be passed on to customers further down the line. And I don't know what the attrition rate or how much the cost, I'm not privy to that, but it must be cheaper. It must surely be cheaper to spend 5 minutes on the factory production line, just training the staff and say, I'm labouring the point here, but look at the rings. Are there any gaps? Yes. In that case, put it in the reject bin. Is there any misalignment? Yes. Put it in the reject bin. Are they in perfect, no gaps and perfect alignment? Yes. Attach them to the Filofax. What could be simpler? Now, I've had a bit of a moan here, but I wouldn't really think about this too much if it was something that was a fairly mundane thing where you just accept that these things happen. But these binders are marketed as premium products. Filofax lean heavily on the legacy of their heritage, which is now over 100 years old. They're marketed as premium, up and above cheaper ones that you might find. And yet, there does seem to be a problem with quality control. That's what I'm saying. So I think it's a difficult one. That's my opinion. Okay. I'm going to just talk about quality control again, just briefly as a side issue. A viewer says, and this is when I was talking again about should prospective buyers be able to handle the merchandise that's on display in a store? And this gentleman says, I hear what you're saying about the Filofax QC lottery by inspecting binders in John Lewis. But it does beg the question, a Malden, and this is what the gentleman's asking, a Malden at full retail or a Vanderspec? I think we both know the answer. Well, there's two ways of talking about this, because I bought my new Malden for, albeit it's got faulty rings, slightly faulty rings. And it's got a faulty zip. you have to wiggle it and wiggle it and wiggle it to open because there's a problem with the zip. And there's a problem with the leather as well, because it's the first one I've had, and the leather doesn't do it for me. And as we all know, the general, there's anecdotal evidence out there all the time, constant anecdotal evidence suggesting that the early models of the Malden had much better quality leather than current models. And so you've got all these questions being asked on YouTube and social media. Where can I get this? Why has the leather not, people are generally disappointed. And others are aware of this issue, if it is an issue. Perhaps it is an issue. And they're specifically looking for older models because of the leather issue. And I do not know of any other product where older versions of the same product, ostensibly the same product, are targeted because of the better quality of the older ones rather than the latest ones. I can't think of, and this is a product that is aimed at the premium market. It's marketed as a premium product. So the gentleman says, a Malden at full retail or a Vanderspec. Now, I paid £52 for my Malden, brand new, which was an absolute bargain. I think they're £106 in John Lewis, 52 in John Lewis. The same product. And I paid £100 for my pre-owned Vanderspec, albeit in good condition. And I think they're about £135 new. These are the standard Vanderspecs called the Touch Me model. I can't for the life of me understand why Touch Me is a good name for a product, but it is what it is. I'm not going to, I can see it here, but I'm trying my best not to have visual cues, because I know that people are actually I will, but I'm going to describe it. So bear with me a second. Let me just do this again, because I wasn't planning on doing this, but it is so tempting to do. So for those of you listening or driving in the car or whatever, I am taking out my Malden, my brand new Malden, in a box. I'll tell you what, and I'm just holding up the packaging, and I am marveling at the really good quality of the presentation, the box and everything. I think that's brilliant. But I'm holding up a Malden here, and it doesn't smell of leather, and I'm sniffing it, and it doesn't really smell of leather. Very faintly. I'm sure it has got some leather in here. And then I'm opening it, and I do like the pocket arrangements. I'm not a Philistine, but this zip. Now, basically, I'm tugging on the zip, and I'm trying to get it to work, but you can hear that it's stuck there. So we got a problem with the zip, the fact that the leather is kind of what I call kind of plastic leather. Certainly in the UK, some of us describe this as pleather rather than leather, because it's kind of a plasticky type leather. It's got a coating on it. You just don't know what's underneath here. I'm looking at the rings, and I can see that there are a few gaps. Not terrible, but you'd expect it to be better, frankly. So I am looking at that Malden with a slightly disappointed look on my face. And then I am now holding up a a standard. I'm going to call it a standard, not a touch me. I don't like the word touch me. A standard Van der Spek, which is made in the Netherlands. It's handmade, and the leather feels nice and lovely, and it's got a really strong leather smell. It's the sort of leather smell that suggests to me that this is actually leather, whereas the Malden, I know it is leather, but it doesn't have a leather smell, and that confuses me. But the Van der Spek is lovely, and it's better made, and the pockets are, even though I'm not a fan of pockets, I do like the quality of it. And crucially, the rings are in perfect alignment because they're Krauss rings, and Krauss rings they have a really good reputation. And this zip is actually a YKK zip, which is one of the best zips in the business. I'm trying to do this two-handed, but basically I'm opening the zip. I don't know whether you can hear that. Let me see if I can do it here. Okay, so for those of you that are listening, I am opening and closing the zips, and it's super smooth. As you might expect, it's a more expensive binder in terms of the quality of the construction and also the quality of the material. So Krauss rings, they're not cheap. They are not cheap, but they are arguably the Rolls Royce of rings. YKK zips, top end zips, you know. It just has an air of quality about it. Now, let me put down those visual cues. So the thing is, this guy says, a Malden at full retail or Van der Spek? I think we both know the answer. Now, if I didn't know that Van der Spek existed, and that is a possibility, because certainly when I had, so I am, for those of you that are watching, I am holding up a Filofax Sherwood that I have used virtually every day for the last 31 years now. It's old and battered, but the quality is sensational, and the rings are very, very good. They're not Krauss rings. I don't know who made these rings, but excellent, very smooth and precise. And the engineering of the teeth is better than a modern Filofax. So maybe maybe modern rings have come from a cheaper manufacturer, you know. But this is old and battered, but it's still going strong. And the thing is, this is the thing. Now, when I bought this, it was the second binder. It was my first Filofax, but the second binder, because I got into this whole Filofax style thing because someone gave me, as a present, a cheap W. H. Smith's binder, which had no flatability at all. So I have been obsessed with flatability for the best part of my life, because I was in my local W. H. Smith's and I paid $49.99 for this, £50. And from the day I bought it, it had perfect flatability, whereas the one that I had been given as a gift had zero flatability. You needed 3 hands to use it, or some way of clamping, restraining the page, the covers, so that you could actually use it. It was ridiculous. And so from the get-go, from September 1993, as a user of a Filofax with perfect flatability, I am dismayed when I come across a Filofax. It doesn't have to necessarily be a modern one, because there are plenty of vintage Filofaxes that have appalling flatability, at least for the first 30 or 40 years of use, and then they mellow out. But who has 30 or 40 years to train the leather on their Filofax? The very fact that you could, back in 1993, maybe earlier, but certainly I'm speaking from experience about my purchase, the very fact that Filofax had the knowledge to produce a binder with perfect flatability suggests to me that the fact that they currently sell binders without perfect flatability suggests that either they have forgotten how to make them with perfect flatability, or they've cheapened the construction and the design because they think that they can, they're making the assumption that marketing and selling filofaxes without the fundamental flatability requirement that personally I think is so essential, and I know that many people do, is not an important enough issue to address it. So they just flog clamshell designs that snap shut, and you can't really use them as a working tool. You can use them for reference, but like a paperback book doesn't have perfect flatability, but you can read it. But it is one of those things. So I do blow hot and cold over this, but I know what I like and I know what I don't like. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because when I bought, and I'm holding up my 31-year-old Filofax Sherwood again. When I bought this, I was not aware of Van der Spek's existence, even though they've been going for, I believe, many decades. Now, had I been aware, I'm assuming that Van der Spek would have been a little bit more expensive than my Filofax Sherwood. And similarly, today you can buy if you went into a shop right now or ordered it, unless there's a discount going on, you would be paying about, in today's money, in July 2024, you'll be paying about £108, £106, something like that. And a Van der Spek, the basic version that I own now, is 135. So we're only talking about a small amount of extra money. But would that person that goes into the store and buys a Malden for 106, 108, would they be aware of that Van der Spek binders were available? Now, if they did, I think many of those Malden owners would buy a Van der Spek. But Van der Speks are more difficult to get purely because they are only available online. Certainly here, I've never seen a Van der Spek in a retail store, but correct me if I'm wrong about that. So the gentleman says, I think we know the answer. So the answer is, the answer to which he is alluding, and my confirmation, is the fact that if it's a choice of paying full price, i.e. 106 for a Malden and 135 for a Van der Spek, there's such a small difference in cost and such an enormous difference in quality, it's a no-brainer. Go for the Van der Spek. But it isn't as easy as that, because obviously it's the acquisition that is the problem, and the knowledge that there are other binders out there. It gets more tricky though. It gets more tricky if you can go into a store, as I did a few weeks ago, and pay £50, £52 for, well, I didn't go in and see it on the shelf. I did click and collect, so I saw it on the WH Smith's website, and then ordered it click and collect, and then I picked it up in the store for £52. Now that makes the difference in price significant. So if you're on a tight budget, £52 for a brand new Malden with a warranty, so that means it gives you peace of mind. If it does turn out to be a problem with the rings, you can just get it replaced, and then hopefully the second one you get, well, you can quickly look at the rings and see whether you've got a fighting chance of getting one. And if that has faulty rings, then order another one. And, it's not going to cost you anything. If you bought it from the Filofax website, they would give you a return label so that you could send it back free of charge, and they would send you one free of charge, at least in terms of shipping. So Filofax have got very, very, very good customer service from that regard, which is just as well, I suppose. I would go for the Vanderspec. In fact, I had a Norfolk on my list, and I may still buy a Norfolk to road test it. But I saw this Vanderspec, which is very, very similar to the Norfolk. Very, very similar. And I thought, I'm going to go for... I can't get all of them immediately because, it would be thousands of pounds, wouldn't it, if you bought every single model. But I wanted to share I wanted to find out what the whole thing about Vanderspec was all about, and I'm very, very pleasantly surprised. Lovely. Fantastic quality. So I am, I must admit, if I was buying one for myself, knowing what I know now, and I just wanted to buy one Filofax and one binder, and I wanted one where I could keep everything in one place, which isn't for me, but I know a lot of you out there want everything in one place. And I understand that. And for years, that is how I use this, everything in one place. It's now, as you can probably see, it's got a set of 26 A to Z dividers. So this is like a reference book, but I refer to it every single day. If I was after one binder and I wasn't going for a vintage one, if I was going for a vintage one, I can thoroughly recommend, if you want just one Filofax, cheap and sensational quality, go for, and what complicates things is they're over a 3 or 4 year period, they were fiddling around with the quality of this, cheapening it. So early ones are better quality. Very early ones seem to be not so good quality. I just lucked out on this. It just was one of the Sherwoods where the quality was excellent. I would say go for one of these if you are okay with a vintage binder. And if you are wanting a brand new binder and you're willing to pay £135 for a binder that could last you a lifetime of work, say 40 years, spending £135, and I'm holding up my Vanderspec, spending £135 on a product that will probably still be able to be used 40 years' time when you retire. If you're in your early 20s, you could buy one of these, potentially because of the Krauss rings and because of the quality of leather. It would last you a whole career, and £135, split over 40 years is less than a cup of coffee a year. So from a longevity point of view, this becomes even cheaper than the Malden, because with the Malden, I suspect, where is my Malden? I've hidden it away. Oh no, I won't get it out. But that Malden, I don't think that it would, if you're using it in anger, I don't think it would have a 40-year lifetime. Partly because of the rings, and partly because the leather, it's a very thin surface layer of leather that, especially at the corners, could wear away until you're exposing the man-made substrate, which is kind of like a cardboard substrate, and it will look really, really unsightly. If you wanted something that would get better with age rather than unsightly with age, then there are plenty of vintage Filofaxes. I'm holding up a Danes and Hathaway one, which is made out of the sort of leather that you might find on high quality luggage or a Victorian sofa, or a saddle for a horse. And this sort of leather, and I'm showing the viewer that this leather has no man-made substrate. The only thing in here is 2 pieces of top quality full grain leather, no cardboard inside, nothing like that. It is just proper leather, as I call it, proper leather, and it has Krauss rings. So this might last you, this could easily last 200 years. I think and I'm holding up the Van der Spek, used in anger, I mean bashed about, but backwards and forwards, in your bag, out your bag, on the table, on a different tables in a train, and move them around, and a little bit of coffee spillage, and then dropping it on the floor, and then someone accidentally treading on it as they're walking down the train aisle, and they put the heel from a high heel pair of shoes through this, and I mean I'm painting a bleak picture, but the thing is, even though this one, the Van der Spek, is sensational quality from a longevity point of view, I think in here there is some sort of stiffener in here, and there's some man-made material. Whereas if you went for a Filofax design, albeit this is Danes and Hathaway, for instance, it is absolutely no cardboard, no plastic, nothing. Metal rings, brass attachment thing, nipple or whatever. And Filofax used to make these. So here we are. This is calf leather, full grain calf leather, made probably in the 1980s. This is a Gloucester 6CL, and it's really chewed up, but all the better for it. It looks sensational. This might last 200 years. The Van der Spek might last 40 years. You never know, which is probably enough for most people. But the Malden, jury's out. It depends how you handle it. If you handle it with love and care, as many people do, might last a whole lifetime. But if you're using it in anger, the abrasion, the daily wear and tear on the corners and the spine and the base, you might find that the cardboard inside, or cardboard like material, is rearing its ugly head and trying to push through, and you will discover that the leather isn't full grain leather. It's just a thin veneer of leather underneath a few layers of what looks to be cardboard. Oh dear. So I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. So if it was me, in answer to the gentleman's question, he's right. We both know the answer. Malden, great for someone that's just getting started on a budget. But if you want the real deal, go for brand new. I'd go for a Van der Spek. Or if you want something vintage, well, there's all sorts of things you can choose from, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Filofax. There are several manufacturers of high quality, full grain leather binders made in that boom, the early 80s, or the 1980s boom, where everybody was jumping on the bandwagon because there's profit to be made, especially if you can sell binders for what was a huge amount of money, like a Filofax. I've got a Filofax Bloomsbury that did cost 208 in the catalogue. It's £285 back in 1988, I think. So that's probably about £500 or £600 now, maybe a bit more. And my question to you would be, if you saw a Filofax Bloomsbury right now in the store, brand new, made of the finest quality leathers, and constructed using the finest quality artisan craftsmen, would you, obviously a nice thing to have, but would you pay £500 or £600 for a binder? Or would you pay £52 for a Malden? There's no contest, is it? The Malden represents I think the sweet spot. The sweet spot between, I mean, there's some that are like a Filofax domino. It works, but it's not an object of desire. I would argue that if you can get a Malden cheap or a Norfolk cheap, I mean, you could get an A5, or at least you could the other day. You could walk into your John Lewis store, my local, and I could have bought, I mean, I as I say in the video, I could have bought it, but I didn't really need it, so I didn't. I left it there were several there. I let someone else have them. £45 for an A5 Malden. You can't beat that sort of value. You get a really good, reasonably quality binder with pockets, and it looks like leather. It is leather, but not as we know it, but it is leather. So superficially it looks nice, and it's got plenty of pockets, and so long as you're careful with the rings, or get one with good rings, just swap out the one that if you find you have not got good rings, just swap it out under warranty for another one, no problem. So you end up with one with good rings, hopefully one that doesn't have the zip problem that I've got, and you can't. £45 for an A5 leather well-designed binder, and they are well-designed, and it's got a warranty, and it's brand new. I would say it's the bargain of the century. Far more of a bargain than, say, a Van der Spek. But the Van der Spek is made to higher quality standards. So you pay your money and he takes your choice. I mean, as a guy, I'm fairly immune from this sort of thing. I mean, what backpack do I use? I use a cheap backpack that costs $9.99. But I do know that you ladies can spend £1,000, £2,000, several £1,000s on a bag, a handbag. Well, I'm glad I don't have that issue, but I do understand how if you buy something that you're using every day, whether it's a nice wristwatch or a bag or a nice pair of shoes, it is worth paying more money for the item, more money than some other people would spend. I mean, for instance, I have got 2 DVD players. I'm a bit old school when it comes to sound reproduction and audio video equipment. That's another rabbit hole I've gone down. But just as an example, I've got 2 DVD players. One is $19.99 and the other is $1,200. And that $1,200, it's actually 25 years old. And I paid the equivalent in today's money of maybe £2,500 for a DVD player. And yet you can buy a DVD player in a store right now for $19.99, and they sound almost as good, they look almost as good, but there are subtle nuances, and the feel-good factor of that audio visual, you cannot ignore the fact that once you see those differences, they will bug you like mad. If you've got the money, you should play it. Someone I know has custom-made golf clubs, and I think they're very, very, very expensive. And if you think Filofaxes can be a bit expensive, I know someone that I know someone that's into guitars, custom handmade guitars, and we are in a total new ball game. It would make the average Van der Spek custom feel like loose change in your pocket. Incredible. So everybody's different. For me to answer, and I've talked about this quite a lot. For me, I think it's nice to have both. It's nice to have the Van der Spek, which I love. Even though I'm not really using it, I do appreciate the quality. So I'm not using it at the moment. I'm not sure how I'm going to use it, but where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm not sure, and again, I'm not using the Malden, but again, I'm sure I'll find something, even if it's just for storage. I might sell it on, but the problem is it's difficult to sell something on if it's got bad rings and a bad zip. You know, obviously I'd have to let people know and let them make their own decision about that. I mean, it's not bad, but it would have to be cheap because of those faults. So I personally think I'm probably not going to get my money back, even though I got it for £52. I'll probably keep it for some purpose. But that's a long way round talking about this issue. So, next comment. Okay, this is quite a long one, but I'm going to read it word for word because I think it's important to precisely read a comment word for word. And by the way, I really do read every word. I don't just click and accept it and then click and then do the heart thing. And I actually read these, every single one. So this is what this person says. And again, we're talking about, should customers be allowed to handle filofaxes on display? And this person says, I think this is more of an issue that sellers should be considering, simply because, as you stated, if something's locked away, the customer is less likely to consider buying it. If a business wants to keep its door open, they'll have to pay attention to what the customer does and doesn't like and adjust their sales strategy accordingly. As a consumer, you can give off signals by either buying or not buying. So if you don't like how a business handles its sales, you don't buy there. I think online stores have a bigger problem here, as people can't physically touch the items, but I suppose they try to get round that by taking very detailed product photos and have models posing with said products in use to give an idea to customers what it would be like to hold it. Now, very, very good points. The last point makes me smile because I'm trying to imagine. I mean, that's very appropriate for things like cars or holidays. You basically want to see someone sitting on the beach enjoying their holiday and marveling at the baggage check-in and how smoothly it went, you know, and their experience of, you know, eating an ice cream on the beach, and all the beach vendors are smiling. There's no aggressive timeshare salesman striding round the beach, you know, none of that nonsense. Or it's a car, and if a car is advertised for guys, there's always, so the guy is, you've got a picture of the guy with a smug sense of satisfaction on his face, and there's all these ladies looking at the car that he's driving and marveling at the length of the car's bonnet or hood. And then the guy is sort of really sort of, you know, he's obviously in a good place right now, and then the salesman is giving them the thumbs up. Yeah, this is going to get you lots of attention, and, you know, so I can understand that. But for filofaxes, no, I must admit, I think filofaxes are such a personal thing. I don't think people are buying a filofax to show themselves off. They probably did in the 80s, when at the height of the yuppie boom, but they're probably a little bit more circumspect now. And I think the one point that I disagree with the reader or the viewer is I disagree with that, because I think most people, they're not trying to impress people with their filofax purchase. They are buying one for themselves, and that's the way it should be. That's certainly what I'm doing. I'm not taking my Vanderspec out on the street and casually leaving it at a jaunty angle in a cafe where I just toy with a pack of Galois cigarettes, with a frustrating look on my face because I know that I'm just getting one ready because we're not allowed to smoke or do any smoking in public places now, indoors, and waiting till I get out of onto the two Oxford's a street in Oxford where there's always a couple of chairs outside the cafe, and then you can just pose with your gitane cigarettes or your Gauloise, and with your pork pie hat at a jaunty angle. Actually, I might put a little. I might put a little video, a little picture in there. Who knows? But from a point of view of consumers, locking something away is the kiss of death for something like a Filofax. I really do believe that the strategy for retailers is to accept a certain amount of attrition. And what I mean by that is handling wear and tear. And that can be significant on a Filofax, especially if people are looking at the inserts with their grubby fingers. And, you know, at the end of the day, you don't know who has washed their hands after visiting the ladies or the gents or not. You know, it is an issue, perhaps. But certainly, when I buy a used Filofax, I clean it at the first opportunity. But I think having the way John Lewis do it, they have things not only on display so you can open them without the boxes. So they take them out the boxes and just have them in the cellophane wrapper. I think it's a really, really clever idea, because they even have, as you saw from my video, they have some shelf space so that you can, some tabletop space if you like, so that people can put it down and flick through it. And I definitely think that the extra trade that imbues in a business more than covers the need to sell off at a discount those Filofaxes that have been on display for a few weeks and have just started to exhibit some wear and tear on the corners and the pages and that. I really do think it's a great strategy. I don't know what their sales figures are like, obviously, but clearly people are being encouraged to do that. In a department where there's no obvious shop assistant, store assistant to advise. So there's no sign saying, please help yourself, and start opening and shutting and testing these binders to destruction. There's no invitation there. But there is an implied expectation that the customer is going to feel okay to open it and have a look. So I think it's a good strategy. Okay, I'm going to end with this because we're just coming up to over an hour. And again, it is in response to my video, should customers be allowed to handle Filofaxes on display? And I've just been going through these, picking up at random in reverse chronological order. So all but one or two of these responses is about this one video. But it has generated a lot of responses. So this viewer says, very interesting video. I've never thought about this issue before. Here in southeastern US, it's fairly common practice to open packages that aren't taped shut, at least, to inspect goods before purchasing. From personal experience, even salespeople will often open something to help you get a better look. Haha. Now, that's not the case in the UK. When you go to a big box store, a lot of the time everything is sealed up. And I don't know whether things are changing, because because there are a lot of returns to a store where you have to take it home and open the box. So I personally think the strategy employed by my local John Lewis store, i.e., there's an implied invitation to examine the merchandise because all the filofaxes have been taken out of their boxes, and there's some tabletop space to rest the filofax while you check it out. I think that's fairly unusual. I did have one viewer who said that that was causing a problem in a local shop of his, and I think he was referring to filofaxes. I don't know what store, but they took steps to solve that problem. But it is, in my opinion, it's the price, it's the cost of doing business. One of the costs of doing business. You have to accept a certain amount of attrition. And I'll end it with this because, as I've said before, the markup, traditionally the markup for the retailer, you've got this long chain of people who want their cut. They want a certain amount of profit in this product. So you've got the designers, you've got the ring manufacturers, you've got the leather processors, you've got the people that make the cardboards that it forms the basis of many filofaxes these days. You've got the factory, the assembly factory that puts everything together. Then you've got the shipping company, you've got the importer, you've got the warehouse staff. You've got to have a warehouse. You've got to have there's people that want money from insurance, heating, lighting, power, and crucially wages. And that's just before you get to the retailer. Then the retailer, it's a similar thing, heat, power, wages, advertisers, insurance, business rates to the local council. There's a huge number of costs to doing business, from the mine to the retailer, to the person that buys, the consumer, from the mine to the consumer, or for the animal if you're buying a leather filofax, from the animal roaming around in the field, enjoying its life, hopefully a good life, to the consumer. So you've got all these costs, but the retailer traditionally has deserves the biggest slice of the cake. And I've spoken about this at length in one of my channel members' exclusive coffee breaks. By the way, if you like this format where I am talking about general stuff, then hopefully you will absolutely love my members' coffee breaks, which are only available to channel members. There is a link in the description if you want to give it a go and join for a month. And it doesn't cost very much, but you can join for a month and binge watch everything and then see what you think. But that is your call. But I have mentioned this before to channel members. But my opinion is that it is. My opinion is that it is something that retailers need to do. If there is sufficient margin, and the retailer should get a really, they should get the bigger slice of the cake. If there is sufficient margin to allow a certain attrition rate, what I mean is you find that you put a filofax on display, or it might be a car, a car in a forecourt or showroom, and they allow a certain number of test drives to prospective customers. If it doesn't sell, they will maybe drop the price, or they might sell it for a quick sale at another dealer. They won't let it go for 1,000 test drives and then throw it away. They will sell it while it still has a good value. And I think that's the right strategy for John Lewis. They've obviously they know what they're doing. I mean, they've been around for over 100 years. Have a really good reputation for customer service. And there is this a cost associated with markdowns, so that they can sell the products on another shelf at a reduced price before, for instance, the attrition becomes so bad that you can start seeing the cardboard through the underneath the pleather or the plastic leather or whatever you call it. So they will probably have someone just checking every now and again, and if there is any noticeable wear and tear, then they mark it down. And it's the same with food, isn't it? Food has a sell-by date, and if it's getting close to the sell-by date, rather than throw it in the skip behind the store, they would rather reduce the price, so at least they get some money back. And I'm sure that's the same. So they must have this must be a strategy that has been discussed and formulated over time. But it is interesting. It is interesting, and crucially, as I showed in my video, A5 Malden with a little bit of wear and tear, 45 quid. I mean, extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Probably one of the best bargains out there. I don't know how much a new one is, but if the personal one is 106 or 108, I imagine the A5 might be 130 or 140, something like that. Don't know. Have a look at the Filofax website and find out. But 45 quid for an A5 Malden has a small element of wear and tear. I would go for that every time. But thank you very much for watching. It's now 1.25 hours. I have recently, my health has improved a little bit. Do you remember I was really struggling the last time I did a podcast, and it was only about 30 or 40 minutes, and here we are, 1 hour 13. So I'm kind of making up for lost time. Thanks very much for watching. Until my next video, or indeed my next podcast, goodbye. Thank you for watching, and take care. Bye for now.